Today's content is another WesHammer video, so please go check out his content, and the original video will be in the description. Thank you. Welcome to A Christian Reacts, and today we're going to be reacting to WesHammer's The Insanity of Each Orc Clan Explained. And before we get into that, and I owe you guys an apology, I've been forgetting to say how I differentiate myself from every other React channel is I bring the biblical perspective to things. And I apologize. I didn't do that the past few videos. So, because you guys can just go to every other Warhammer 40k React channel, right? Tick, a beautiful face, right? Beautiful than my face. So how I set myself apart is I bring the biblical perspective to things and give you guys the truth on what the Bible says. So, now that we got that out of the way, if you like what you see, please consider a like and subscription. I also do a Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible shorts. I no longer do the longer form videos, but anyways, so let's get started. And real quick, I do want to show you this. I have to bring this up. Okay, Joel 1:6. This is about orcs, at least in my opinion. Joel 1:6. For a nation has come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath cheek teeth of a great lion. All right, so let's go here, right? Here's the teeth of the orcs. I want you to pay attention to that. Here's lion's teeth. And then here's the cheek teeth, right? So, very, very interesting. All right, let's get into this.
And everyone loves them, and I will not tolerate anyone saying otherwise. Today we're going to be talking about all of the different orc
This is
clans
for you,
because
Chroma.
they're all wildly different from one another and have some pretty interesting conflicting philosophies on the nature of the universe, the best way to live one's life, and most importantly, what's the best way to get stuck in a fight? We're going to be talking about a clan of orcs that is famed for being the biggest, toughest, and meanest around, due to the fact that their primary strategy of warfare revolves around charging headlong into the enemy guns. A clan of orcs that is seen as outcasts by all the rest, as they actually take the time to come up with tactics and strategies rather than just charging into the fight. A ridiculous concept to the orcs. We're also going to be talking about a clan that's not actually a clan at all, and is made up of a bunch of different...
You know, if you think of the Gog and Magog stuff like that, that's exactly what they do, right? They're charging headlong, like in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, encamping the saints, right? So, and they number is the sand of the sea, kind of like orcs. But anyways.
Different orcs from different tribes that were kicked out for being a weird bunch of misfits. So what did they do instead?
I feel
they
that.
Band together and become pirates. We're going to be talking about all that and a whole lot more. But first, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, and then we're going to dive headfirst into the grimdark. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you know I'm a massive fan of Into the AM, as not only do they make some of the coolest graphic tees on the internet,
We'll play for a little bit, but I'm sure you guys don't want to.
Out
So
of
check
all
that
the
out.
factions in the 42nd millennium, none quite capture 40k's brutality quite like the orcs. They are savage, aggressive, and admittedly, kind of hilarious. There are a lot of different types of orc.
You know, it would be totally full grim dark without the orcs. You know, they're the comic relief in the Warhammer 40k universe. Thank goodness for them.
As there are 6 different clans that each have their own different philosophies
might like me saying
and way
that.
of conducting war.
He's the resident orc on the channel.
Clans has their own particular thing, see? The Evil Sunz is fast, loves their trucks. The Deathskulls is a bunch of filchers. Bad Moons is snobby and flash. And the Blood Axe is just a pack of filthy Umi lovers. And the Snakebites is just weird. Us Goffs is the biggest, and the greenest, and the meanest, of course. That's what makes us the best bosses.
The orcs are a race that doesn't waste time thinking about the nonsensical traditions of other species.
Chroma, you're gonna have to teach me orc. And like I think there's sites out there that you can type in something and it'll give you the orc for it, which is pretty cool, but I'm not sure. I haven't tried it yet, so anyways. I digress.
Like military organization, caste-based systems, or even an individual's role within
I need to stop
society.
saying that.
And to the orcs, this is all done at an instinctive level. Each and every one of the boys knows exactly who and what they are, and knows where to
The
find other
boys.
boys that think just like they do. The closest thing resembling any kind of actual structure that the Imperium has been able to witness within orc culture is that of the tribes,
squigs.
clans, and warbands. The structure of an orc tribe is remarkably simple, especially when you compare it to the often archaic hierarchical structures within the Imperium of Man. And
Again, pay attention to their teeth.
you can think of it like this. A tribe is ruled over by a warlord, and the tribe itself is made up of a bunch of different war bands that are each ruled over by a war boss. Each of those war bands is in turn made up of a bunch of different mobs. Groups of orcs bound together as social or fighting units, often coming together with a preferred style of combat. Tribes include every boy, squig, runt,
That's a grot right there, right? Yeah, that's a grot. Okay, anyways.
orc war engine, or odd boy making a claim to any location that they happen to wander into, as well as any shiny gubbins they happen to come across. The culture of which varies from tribe to tribe. Some orc tribes are built out like a sprawling scrap fortress, giant clusters of junk strung
That is
together
pretty cool.
vaguely in the shape of an
You gotta
encampment.
admit that.
They are like a vast junkyard, a shanty town that can have all types of different orky facilities, as some of which would include mech boy workshops, pain boy clinics, squig pens, weird boy towers, scrap-built bunkers, shoddily dug-out racetracks.
You know, I would never even, if I saw this like at a distance, I would try to avoid that. You know?
And even fungus-infested pits that are the equivalent of latrines to the orcs. But they just call
I don't
them,
know why that
quote,
made me laugh.
the drops. But that's just one type of tribal encampment. They can come in numerous
Donkey.
different shapes and forms, limited only by the imagination of their green-skinned inhabitants. Some tribes don't build permanent structures at all, preferring to live a more nomadic lifestyle. And this is pretty common with tribes made up entirely of speed freaks or beast snaggas. These groups live off the land and smash everything to bits.
said something different,
leaving
YouTube,
and
okay?
eating whatever they want from the wreckage. There have even been reports of
not
a
what you
tribe
think.
encampment that takes the form of a mobile fortress, created by the eccentric mech boys of the tribe and dragged along by huge teams of trample squigs or motorized vehicles. There are countless tribes and warbands spread out across the galaxy, and
In the Book of Enoch, it talks about how these giants and stuff were like 3,000 ells, which was very, very tall. Kind of like, almost like the dreadnoughts and stuff like that, right? But anyways.
most of which will end up being home to orcs from many different clans. As are most things within orc society, tribes are not traditionally seen as permanent. They can sometimes break apart if they get too large and infighting occurs, which is pretty common with the orcs, as they may end up being shattered in a particularly violent war. If
Oh, I was getting ready to say that. I was like, unless you have a wall, but
it
anyways.
happens that after such an event there are any
You beat me
survivors,
to it.
they may end up joining a new tribe. They normally find sanctuary in groups that have particularly large abundance of orcs from their own clan. And the roots of the clans run deep throughout orc society and touch on every tribe no matter where they happen to be located. Tribes can owe allegiance through the clan system to orcs they have never met before, separated by vast subsectors. And each individual tribe
did
can
not
be
know
full
that.
of orcs
That's
from
cool.
different clans. You can think of it like an orky caste system that is not enforced by societal norms or birthrights, but more so by something ingrained within the orcs at a subconscious level.
happens.
You see, when each and every orc is created, they instinctively know which clan they belong to. It's not a conscious choice that they make. Each clan is made up of orcs that all collectively share very specific obsessions, inclinations, outlooks, and philosophies. This
So almost kind of like the Tau, huh? You know, where they got different, like a caste system, you know, the ethereals and the fire caste, all that, but with different things, but not exactly like that. But anyways,
like-minded view of things is what most orcs describe as their culture. If you didn't know, the orcs put
culture.
very specific superstitious beliefs on different colors. And due to the orcs' inherent ability to bend reality around their beliefs, there does appear to be some truth to this notion. The most classic example of which being that the orcs believe red things go faster, so a vehicle painted red will in a very real sense go faster than all the
let me know, you know, I need to try Speed Freaks. I want to try that game out so bad, and I keep forgetting to download it. Let me know in the comments if it's any good or not.
rest. They believe blue things are lucky, yellow things make better explosions or generate more wealth, stuff painted black is tough to kill, etc., etc. Each orc has a favorite color, and with very little exception, they will end up finding like-minded brotherhoods of
That
color
is kind of the way
enthusiasts
people
in
used to
whatever
think.
clan they happen to be part of. all of them wearing clothing and painting their armor in the same colors. But a clan is more than just aesthetics. All of the orcs within a clan also favor particular styles of war, and tend to have similar outlooks on life, the galaxy, and just about everything else you can think of. There are a lot of different clans throughout the galaxy, but there are 6 main ones that we're going to focus on. The Goff clan, whose color of choice is black, and whose members tend to be bigger and tougher than other orcs. The Evil Sunz, who wear red.
Do they paint their nails black too?
Reds and oranges and produce the most speed freaks, orcs that are particularly obsessed with going fast. The Deathskulls, which are an orc clan that are known as a bunch of thieving gits, and tend to smear themselves
there ain't no way
in
they're
lucky
listening to
blue
emo.
paint.
That's
the
for
Blood
sure.
Axes are a weird clan that have a particular fondness for wearing camouflage. They utilize tactics and strategies that they've witnessed other species using in battle, a concept that is unthinkable to other orcs. The Snakebites are another.
You know, they do kind of remind you of the Visigoths, you know, where the Gothic architecture and stuff, not the architecture, I shouldn't say that, but they do kind of remind you how the Visigoths acted, right? Very warlike and stuff like that, but anyways.
Another weird one, in that they're a clan that favors what they refer to as the old ways, wearing leather and primitive clothing, and refusing to use any complex orc technology. And finally, there's the Bad Moons, and everybody hates the Bad Moons. Well, except for the Bad Moons, of course. Yellow is their preferred color,
It was
and
always
they're
a
known as
hated,
bunch of rich
always a hated
kids.
clan.
So let's talk a little bit more about each one of these clans in detail, and figure out what makes all of them unique. And we'll start off with the Goffs. The orcs of the Goff clan are known for being the biggest, meanest, and
that.
toughest orcs around. They prefer to fight on foot, typically in huge, ground-pounding mobs that are somewhere between a military formation and an all-out riot. They resemble something like a rolling tidal wave of black and green that obliterates everything in its path. When fighting alongside other clans, the Goffs have a tendency to bully their way to the front, eager to get stuck in the fight. They display traits of overt belligerence in the face of imminent peril, a characteristic that they take as a point of pride. No self-respecting Goff who is right in his head would ever shout things like "take cover" or "maybe we should think about this." No, the Goff's way of fighting is to charge in swinging around a big choppa, screaming war cries.
You wouldn't be an orc if that wasn't the case, man. You gotta charge head first.
At the top of their lungs. Now, just because they prefer fighting on foot doesn't mean that the Goffs are against hopping in a truck or a battle wagon from time to time. The Goff clan is not stupid, and they understand that these machines can get them into a fight quicker, which, at the end of the day, is all anyone can really ask for. They also have a soft spot for big, stompy mechs, like Def Dreads, Gorkanauts, and Stompas, all of which can trample their way into a fight, swinging around giant metal fists or whirling buzzsaws. If you were to ask a member of the Goff clan what their preferred weapon was, and most of them would answer something pretty similar, that nothing beats a good old-fashioned choppa and whatever gun fires the most shells per second. But if push were to come to shove, a member of the Goff clan wouldn't scoff at the opportunity to wield something bigger and more killy. Likewise, power claws have become a widely respected melee weapon of choice within the clan. The thing about the Goffs is they have a deep dislike of anything they consider to be, quote, mucking about. Now, for the orcs, this takes...
You know, like Gog, right? He was this kind of giant type of figure too. And you could think of him as like a war boss. And he shows up in the Old Testament and, of course, in Revelation and all that too. So he would be considered a principality, right? That Paul talks about. Anyways, so very interesting character this
anything
Gog
that wastes
is.
time that could be better spent fighting. They don't like using flashy, unpredictable technologies or coming up with strategies and tactics. They consider themselves to be the orkiest of orcs and will happily take any excuse they can get to prove that claim with their fists, tusks, and choppas. Because of their way of life, the Goffs do have the highest rate of attrition amongst the clans. Now, this isn't something they are particularly bothered by, as the younger orcs that couldn't make it through the Goffs' brutal headbutting contests or pit fights wouldn't have survived in a headlong charge into enemy guns anyways. This weeding out of the weak has led the surviving Goff clan members to be warriors that have seen constant, nearly non-stop battle. And with the orcs, the more they fight and the more battles
just like
they
the Spartans.
win, the larger they grow. Because of this, the Goffs have an overabundance of knobs and produce some of the best war bosses in the entire galaxy. If the Goffs prefer to fight on foot, then the Evil Sunz are almost the exact opposite of them, in that all of their members have an undeniable urge to travel as fast as they can. They are completely
red
obsessed
vehicles.
with raw speed, and their philosophy on life comes down to acquiring ever faster and shootier.
Man, I would love to have like an orc tooth on a truck, you know? and hopefully no cops would stop you, but that would be cool though.
Your vehicles. They race across the battlefield, howling like lunatics, moving unpredictably, whooping and roaring as they hurtle around their foes' flanks or tear through their battle lines and out the other side.
Look at that. How did he get his mouth to be able to do that? Yikes. Oop, whoops.
Clouds of fumes and dust. They are particularly fond of a good chase, as it really lets them open up their throttles against foes who would seek to flee from them or even engage in hit-and-run style warfare. Their enemies that do this quickly find themselves in a life-or-death race against a pack of wildly grinning Evil Sunz orcs. Their colors of choice are bright oranges and red.
Those rockets kind of remind me of the Unreal Tournament smiley face thing when you'd see it slow-mo or whatever. Anyways, sorry.
Which comes
one of my
as little
favorite
surprise,
games,
considering the orcs' inherent belief that red things go faster. The orcs of the Evil Sunz that manage to scrape together enough teeth will inevitably blow them on a souped-up dragsta or its equivalent from one of the Mech Boys' workshops.
If you guys get a chance, watch the level up, I think, or secret level. Sorry, not level up. The secret level of the Unreal Tournament. I thought that was pretty good. Anyways, and then they also have, of course, Titus and the Warhammer 40k one. And I think they might have another Warhammer 40k one coming. It seemed like, anyway. Anyways, sorry.
And the Mech Boys have a ton of different vehicles to choose from half-track warbikes, teleporting combat dragstas, speed wagons bristling with guns, overcharged trucks, or other vehicular nightmares pulled out of the deepest corners of the Mech Boys' imagination. Each of the orcs of the Evil Sunz will end up customizing their rides with bizarre personal improvements, and it's not uncommon for the richest Evil Sunz to drive contraptions powered by jet thrusters, bladed propellers, or squig oil fusion engines. These vehicles boast everything from crackling energy blasters to nose drills, and each of which, of course, wouldn't be complete without a giant red Go Fasta button that also doubles.
Crazy to think about too. If Joel 1.6 is talking about orcs and stuff like that, I wonder what kind of vehicles, what kind of siege weapons and all that they had. Was it axes, like you see, as a chopper? But anyways, I digress.
As a cigar lighter. Because of their obsession with speed, the Evil Sunz tend to live a nomadic life, rarely staying in one place for long. It's important to know that although the Evil Sunz have the largest concentration of speed freaks within their ranks, not all speed freaks are members of the Evil Sunz. They are actually two completely different things. In fact, the speed freaks belong to an orc subculture that is oftentimes referred to as the Cult of Speed. These are orcs that are addicted to racing into battle as fast as possible, and they do so aboard whatever scrap metal speedster, souped-up dragsta, or warbike they can get their hands on. Speed freaks will often gather together in sizable mobs during the rare lulls between warfare, and engage in breakneck races around, or as is more often the case with the orcs, right through their tribe's encampments. I'll forgive you for thinking that other orcs would be upset by such displays, but the reality is they view it as peak entertainment, placing huge bets on whatever speed freak they believe will make it over the finish line first, or conversely, who will end up on fire in a ditch. At the end of the day, all orcs like to go fast. Some just like it a lot more than others. Speed freaks can exist in any of the orc clans, just the largest concentration of them happens to be within the Evil Sunz. The currency that the Evil Sunz use to purchase these vehicles are teeth, the orcs' most common form of currency, and it makes sense for them to use these, as there's a steady supply and they grow at a very predictable rate. However, there is a clan known as the Bad Moons that has a natural advantage over other orcs in that their teeth grow at a much faster rate. Because of this, the Bad Moons have become known as the richest orc clan, and these orcs love flaunting their wealth.
Gonna get a lot of money from the Tooth Fairy on that one. Would be nice. Just
through
saying.
garishly colored clothing,
come on, teeth grow fast,
flashy gold piercings and jewelry, and even more gaudy hats and trinkets. But even more so than clothing, the Bad Moons put their teeth into ever more flashy and lethal custom war gear. They sport the most cutting edge of orc technology and have some of the biggest and killiest guns. And naturally, their clan color is yellow, which the orcs associate with wealth and better explosions. They plaster it on everything they own, whether it's on themselves or whatever they're riding.
That's a banana right there. I wonder what that's supposed to symbolize. I'm kidding. Anyways.
Into war. The Bad Moons have a reputation for being looters, mercilessly
funny.
ransacking the temples and cultural centers of different species in order to steal everything golden or fancy they can get their claws on. Oftentimes, they will wear these ancient relics of significant importance to a different species as a trinket or trophy, or
It almost reminds you of Kegarak, or Segarak, whatever you say his name. You know, the laughing god kind of reminds me of that. Anyways,
as is more common, it melt them down to make something more distinguished and elegant, like a hulking gold nose ring or a gold-plated ram for the front of their battle wagon. There are even some reports of the Bad Moons melting down said artifacts of other races to use as golden bullets for their guns. The only real drawback to their over-the-top way of life is that the average Bad Moon warband can be seen coming from a mile away. One recorded instance stated that the Bad Moon's incoming assault was spotted with the naked eye from low orbit. The Bad Moons don't think this is a problem, however.
That's not good.
If the enemy knows where they are, they reason that a good fight will be coming sooner rather than later. Their warbands are famous for their abundance of overwhelming firepower, riding into battle with belligerent confidence, and laying down enough Daka to take the legs out from a charging Imperial Knight. They utilize a vast array of custom shooters, crackling energy weapons, tricked out battle wagons.
there you go, Chroma. Here is your orc video that you've been wanting.
And squadrons of aircrafts that are so loaded up with frankly ridiculous amounts of Daka that it's honestly a miracle they can get airborne at all. Orcs of other clans tend to look down on the Bad Moons, thinking them weak and show-offish. But the reality is that they're just as tough as the other orcs. They just like to be blisteringly visible whenever they fight. And if the orcs of the other clans were being honest, they might just be jealous of some of that fancy war gear the Bad Moons has access to. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Snakebites, who prefer to live a much more primitive life and are as far away from the Bad Moons as you can possibly get. As instead of wearing the flashy, obnoxious clothing of the Bad Moons, they prefer to wear gnarled, weather-worn garbs made from beast-hide leather. The Snakebites are as traditional as orcs come, favoring primitive war gear.
This is pretty cool. You know, I didn't really dive too deep into the orcs, so learning all the clans, what they're like, is actually pretty cool. So,
in comparison to the Bad Moon's flashy Daka, they show nothing but hate for anything they see as
was that the Imperial Aquila? No, I won't go
needlessly
there.
newfangled or fiddly, which, if we're being honest, encompasses the vast majority of things within the galaxy. They are seen as grumpy, stodgy, and uncompromising in their views, and look down on other orcs who utilize tech they don't understand. They're basically the orc boomers and prefer to live by what they refer to as the old ways. Now, that's not to say that they don't utilize anything that could be called technology, as they have their share of mech boys and pain boys as well, just like every other clan. These individuals are just vastly outnumbered by runt herds and weird boys. They employ their orky know-whats only grudgingly, and don't consider a machine or weapon proper until they've built up a good helping of rust or oil. The Snakebites prefer a much more direct solution whenever one is available. Why waste time dyeing their beast hide in funny colors when they could leave them leathery and cure them with squig urine? Why would an orc waste time building a hut when they could just weather the world's storms like a proper orc? Why mess around with high-tech chain-bladed choppers when they're just gonna end up getting clogged up with Humi bits anyways? Especially when a solid metal club will bash in skulls all day every day and never run out of fuel. The other orcs view the Snakebites as crude savages, and although they openly mock their way of life, none of them would deny that living in such a manner makes the Snakebites as hard as they come. To prove just how tough they are, the Snakebites have a ritual wherein each one of them will have to endure being bitten by a plethora of deadly venomous snakes that the clan has collected from across the stars. This has led to many worlds that get invaded by the Snakebites to have the unfortunate side effect of having said snakes released onto their...
I think there's a culture like in I can't remember if it's Africa or India where they do that, but I don't know if it's like super poisonous or not. I don't think it is, because they would, you know, be deleted. But anyways, I could be wrong on that. So
their planet. Even if the orcs are ultimately pushed back, this once peaceful world is now full of horrifically poisonous snakes. So I mean, like, it's not even really worth defending anymore at that point. Although the other orcs look at the Snakebites as being pretty strange, there's actually another orc clan that is hands down seen as utterly alien to the other orcs. And that's the Blood Axes, the current title holder of strangest and most bizarre of all the orc clans. A title that is well deserved, as they do things the other orcs believe are unthinkable. grievous sins that spit in the face of orc tradition and trample uncaringly on their admittedly limited philosophical beliefs.
That is a cool gun.
They have shown a fascination
Makeshift
with the
cool
tactics
gun,
and
but it is
strategies
cool.
employed by other races. And
Oh,
have
he's
gone
got a
so far
spotter.
as to formulate battle plans and wear crude camouflage of their own.
Putting
Needless to
that-
say, their infatuation with all things tactical has earned the Blood Axes the
Putting
moniker
that
of a
grot
bunch
to
of
use.
cunning gits by the other orc clans. And although they do seem to be tactical masterminds amongst other orcs, from our perspective, at the end of the day, they're still orcs. So their tactics are often very direct and extremely violent, often centered around strategies that will see them get stuck in a fight in the fastest and most enjoyable way. In battle, the Blood Axes will deploy commando mobs to sever enemy communication channels and blow up supply depots. They use high-altitude flyovers of Deathskulls to scout and determine
tactics.
where the enemy is in advance of their hordes. For the Blood Axes, there is no greater joy than catching the enemy off guard in a ferocious ambush of armored orcs that pulverize their way through the enemy ranks. These ambushes have been incredibly successful for them, and they mock the stupid gits of the other clans for not being cunning enough to come up with such genius strategies themselves. But unfortunately for the Blood Axes, the orcs of the other clans will most likely never see them as anything more than a bunch of unorky cowards. Their ways are just too bizarre and alien to them. The most shocking thing that they do from the other clan's perspective is the attacking of the enemy lines when they're at their weakest, instead of charging headlong into the meat grinder of the biggest and best available fight. To the other orc clans, this is just further evidence of their cowardice. But what they failed to realize is that the Blood Axes like a good crumping just as much as any other orc. They just prefer the odds to be in their favor. My absolute favorite thing about the Blood Axes is that unlike other clans, they don't actually have a favorite color. They instead like to wear camouflage, as many of the other races who use similar tactics to them seem to put a high value on splotchy patterns. They realize that camouflage makes them sneakier, but they don't really fully grasp why. It's not uncommon to see an army of Blood Axes in a wide array of contrasting color schemes, each one of them wearing camouflage, but the particular colors of which rarely match the actual environment. Their belief in camouflage as the superior paint scheme is so strong that they'll even paint their very not sneaky airplanes and war engines in a similar manner. To them, the busier and more thickly applied the camouflage,
What is this has nothing to do with like camouflage per se, but it does say like in the Book of Enoch that they were able to transform themselves, which is interesting. So has nothing to do with camouflage, but
this
anyways.
might seem like a silly tradition to people who have read about it but never witnessed it in person. But I'll tell you what, when you see a 50-foot stompa,
And it says, Satan was able to transform himself into an angel of light, right? Camouflaging himself, basically.
covered in rainbow tiger stripes lumbering towards you, it's a sight that you won't soon forget. An interesting thing about the Blood Axes is that in the wild frontiers of the Imperium, it's not completely unheard of for them to sell their services as mercenaries. There have been numerous documented accounts of them working alongside humans, and normally demanding payment in the form of weapons, armors, vehicles, and scrap metal of all kinds. However, these reports also indicate that the Blood Axes traditionally will turn those weapons against the enemies of their employers before inevitably turning them back on their employers as well. They are a very interesting clan that doesn't care what anyone thinks of them. They value results over reputation and will gladly let the other clans take the brunt of the hit in battle, where
That's usually
they
who
use
wins.
tactics and strategies to always come out on top. From the Imperium's perspective, the orcs are the most dangerous enemy to fight against as they are completely unpredictable. The Blood Axes take this to an entirely different level, because if somebody was just to say out loud that the orcs are capable of strategizing, that idea in itself is tantamount to heresy. The Blood Axes are all too happy to prove their enemies wrong. If the Blood Axes are looked down upon for being sneaky through the use of tactics and ambushes, then the Deathskulls have a similar sneaky reputation, but theirs comes from them being a bunch of shifty, thieving gits. Google defines property as a thing or things belonging to someone, and I think we can all agree that possessing a thing that you bought or created makes it your property. Well, the orcs of the Deathskulls feel that possession is merely 9/10 of the law, while the last 10th is violently asserting the other 9. They are a sneaky, amoral bunch of orcs who will gleefully steal another orc's favorite Shuda from right under his nose, before swiftly painting it blue and throwing a couple of customizations onto it, before turning around and selling it right back to them as a brand new.
That is pretty cool. I'm guessing that's like a type of grenade launcher, huh? I need to brush up on my orc lore, man.
piece of gear. It says a lot about just how smart orcs are that the
Kind of reminds you of like that Team Fortress 2. Like the gun I can't remember. I haven't played that game in
Deathskulls
forever.
get away with these scams pretty smoothly, and they've proven to be quite lucrative for them. There have been other instances where an orc will call them out for thieving, and they'll discover too late in the ensuing fight that someone also nicked all of the pins on the stick bombs on their belt. They are a superstitious lot that puts a lot of stock in the color blue as being the
Duke
luckiest
Nukem
color.
stereotype.
Thus, them and all of their equipment sports a thick, heavy coat of it, allowing them to pull off heists that none of the other clans would be capable of. Don't get it twisted. At the end of the day, the Deathskulls are still orcs. They like a proper fight just as much as the other clans. They just see battle primarily as an opportunity for some good old-fashioned looting. Before the fight gets underway, it's not uncommon for the Deathskulls to be sizing up enemy tanks, weapons, planes, and war engines as something that they would like to nab when the fighting is done. Or to be honest, in a lot of instances, a horde of Deathskulls will whip out wrenches in the middle of a fight and start prying bars mid-battle, ripping enemy tanks and fortifications apart for useful scrap. This is especially distressing to whatever enemy crew or garrison troops
The reverse
may still
engineer.
happen to be inside that fortification or vehicle at the time. So their enemies don't like them, and the other orcs hate them. But that doesn't mean the Deathskulls don't have some pretty important friends, as the mech boys absolutely love these guys, as they provide a constant stream of loot and components for their crazy inventions. When the fighting is done, the Deathskulls
There
will
you go.
often latch long, rusty
Symbiotic
chains to any
relationship.
burned-out wrecks and drag them to the nearest mech workshop. The mechs, in turn, will provide them with better custom gear, new vehicles, and upgrade all of their existing DACA with wildly inventive new customized bits.
Can you imagine having all that material that you can just put on your mech boy? That would be awesome.
Because of their thieving ways and alliance with the mech
Unlimited
boys, the Deathskulls
power.
are famous for having the most weird orc technology within their warbands. Whether those take the form of bubble chuckas, teleporter technology, customized energy fields, or just about any other crazy invention the mech boys can come up with. So now that we know about all of the major orc clans, let's talk about my personal favorite, which exists as a bit of an oddity because it's not actually recognized as a clan at all. In fact, if we wanted to get technical with it, it's a clan for the clanless. You see, not all orcs end up fitting into their tribe's unique culture, and they might be too mean and spiteful, have funny ideas about loot, or they may not be able to grasp the concept that those that are bigger, tougher, and meaner than them are naturally their betters. One of the fundamental orky laws of the universe. Such individuals may find themselves as outcasts and thrown out of their tribe. Now, if they manage to survive, they may just become what is known as a freebooter instead.
That is cool, man. You gotta love the orcs. You have to. They be crumping right here, that's for sure. And, oh man, I would love to have this right here.
Instead, the freebooters are the sneakiest, nastiest, and most self-interested orcs in the galaxy. They are a host of adventurers, rogues, and mercenaries who rebel even against the strictures of orc society. Any orc can become a freebooter. It doesn't matter if they're a mech, pain boy, knob, weird boy, whatever. The only requirement is that they don't fit into where they were born.
And they
find
wear
a new
pirate
family
hats.
amongst a bunch of other orky misfits instead. It might not have been their decision to leave. They may have committed to a string of misdeeds
kidding,
that
by the
finally
way.
got to be too much for their warlord to tolerate. Whether they take the form of a bad mech who built a contraption that blew up half his tribe, a speed freak that applied one too many unstable custom jobs to an excessive number of the tribe's wagons, or a pain boy who had a particular fascination with stitching on extra limbs to his patients. Because they are made up of a mismatch of different orcs, each freebooter crew is wholly unique, and there's no
It's the teeth, man. Gotta, that Joel 1:6, man, I really do think it's talking about orcs. That's very interesting. As you see, lion type of teeth here, Anyways.
telling what they're going to end up fielding in battle. The idea of the freebooters is built upon the rejection of orc culture, but even then, some traditions are too deeply ingrained even for them. They still mob up with other like-minded orcs, it's just that they're like-minded.
And if you're new, I gotta remember that there's new people who come on here. So in Genesis 6, angels came down, they mated with women, created giants, but also in the book of chapter 4, it talks about how the same story of Genesis 6, but then it also says that they taught them how to, men, how to mix one species with another. So that's probably where these orcs and stuff like that come from. And I do believe orcs, the word orc comes from like orca or something like that. But I would have to do some more research on that.
Did misfits and outcasts, and it's said that their warbands accumulate like void barnacles on a kill cruiser's hull. They are a band of motley mercenary pirates that roam the galaxy's space lanes at random, preying on everything from cargo ships and warcrafts to isolated colonies and naval space stations. Although, realistically, the freebooters will raid and loot anything that they deem quote-unquote worth a go. The freebooters are perhaps the only orcs that don't fight simply for the joy of fighting. They are pirates and expect financial compensation for their efforts. Each and every one of them is driven by the innate desire to claw together as much loot as possible, and whether that loot come in the form of teeth, scrap, weapons, or anything they happen to fancy, like gaudy clothes and trinkets, or in one famous instance, an inquisitor's fancy hat.
I like your hat, by the way.
Their war bosses often title themselves as captains or admirals, or other such terms that they admittedly don't fully understand. They just recognize that it has something to do with sailing and it sounds fancy. These war bosses rule by two simple principles. And the first is that as long as the loot keeps flowing, then the lads are less likely to challenge them. And the second is that the freebooters are ferociously competitive and will
I broke a tooth. Sorry,
always
that
try
was
to
terrible.
prove that they're better than their crewmates.
Sounded
A
better in
cunning
my head,
captain
but
will keep the boys busy trying to one-up each
suck
other.
with bad
That way
orc.
they don't get any funny ideas in their head that challenging the captain is actually a good idea. From the outside perspective, members of the Imperium and other xenospecies that frequently come into contact with the orcs don't see any of this freebooter culture. They just see a bunch of frenzied orc raiders that have taken a fancy to motley pirate garb and have come to loot, plunder, and murder everything in their path. But from the audience's
happens.
perspective, they're a bunch of orc pirates. What's not to love? All of the
Yeah,
orc clans are
true.
wildly unique and a super interesting part of Warhammer's lore. Which one was your favorite and why? What's your favorite thing about the orcs? Are they actually
the
the best
speed
faction in
freaks.
all of 40k, or do you think their popularity is
Gotta
simply a
love the
result of them
mobility.
having the best memes? Let me know all of your thoughts.
The mobility, mobility and the unpredictableness of the speed freaks, plus the tooths coming out from them. I love it. Anyways,
Down in the comment section because I genuinely
teeth.
love
Did I
hearing
say
what you all
tooth?
think. Also, let
Wow.
me know what other topics you'd love to hear me cover.
My goodness.
And if you made it all the way to the end of the video and you're
all right, guys. So we're gonna end it here. I want to thank everybody for who watches my videos and who supports them. And if you liked it or if you disliked it, thank you for at least giving me a chance. And I don't mean that tongue in cheek either. And I just want to thank all the subs and everybody because this isn't possible without you. And ever since I started doing the React stuff, you guys have been supporting me very well. And again, I do Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible shorts. I just did a Drukhari one, so if you're new and you want to check that out, they'll be in the short section. So, all right. You guys have a wonderful day.